There is a moment, just before your mind starts comparing, justifying, or explaining itself, when something simply pulls you in. No reasoning, no checklist, just a quiet, wordless recognition. That is the moment this test is built for. In front of you are 6 landscapes. They are not just pretty pictures. Each one is a different emotional climate, a different way of existing in the world. Before you start thinking about which one looks the nicest, stop, breathe. Let your eyes move across all 6 and notice which one your attention lands on first, the one that feels like it's already a little bit yours. Carl Jung believed the unconscious doesn't speak in sentences. It speaks in landscapes, in light, in space, in silence. A beach, a cabin, a mountain trail, a field of lavender, a quiet bridge, a desert at dusk. Each one is a symbol for an inner terrain you already live in, even if you've never named it. The place you're drawn to in this moment is not random. It reflects what your psyche is currently asking for: clarity, safety, balance, purpose, healing, or freedom. Choose now, before you read any further. Hold that image in your mind, and let's discover what it's been quietly trying to tell you. If you were drawn to the coastline, the lighthouse standing watch over open water, then somewhere inside you, there's a quiet but urgent hunger for clarity. Not decoration, not noise, not more information. Just clean, honest, uncomplicated truth. People who choose this landscape are usually carrying more mental clutter than they let on. You may look composed on the outside, but your mind is often running several conversations at once, replaying things that were said, rehearsing things you haven't said yet. The horizon in this image is not just scenery. It is what you're craving, a flat, unbroken line where you can finally see where one thing ends and another begins. In Jungian terms, the lighthouse is a symbol of the guiding light of consciousness, the small, steady beam that cuts through fog and confusion. Choosing this image suggests you are someone who navigates life best when you can see clearly, even if what you see is difficult. Ambiguity exhausts you far more than bad news does. You would rather hear an uncomfortable truth than sit in vague uncertainty. This is why chaos drains you more than you admit, even to yourself. Crowded rooms, mixed signals, unspoken tension. These don't just annoy you, they cost you energy you didn't know you were spending. You likely stayed too long in situations, jobs, or relationships that blurred your sense of self, simply because leaving felt more disruptive than staying confused. But here's a quiet shadow side of this choice. In your hunger for clarity, you sometimes mistake stillness for the absence of feeling. You may suppress emotional honesty in favor of looking calm, when what you actually need is the opposite: to say the unclear, messy, unfiltered thing out loud, to yourself first, and then to the people who matter. If this was your landscape, your psyche is not asking you to control everything. It's asking you to stop forcing yourself to stay anywhere your mind can't rest. Clarity isn't something you find by trying harder. It's something that arrives the moment you stop performing calm and start actually choosing it. And yet, not everyone seeks clarity through open space. Some people find their peace not on the horizon, but tucked away from it entirely. To understand that, we turn to the second landscape. If the cabin in the forest is what caught you, glowing windows, smoke rising gently from a chimney, trees standing close like old guardians, then your inner world is built around one deep, recurring need: safety. Not adventure, not attention, a place, and people that feel solid. This is not the same as fear. People who choose this image are not necessarily anxious or closed off, but you have likely learned, somewhere along the way, that trust is something earned slowly, not given freely. You open up in layers. The outer layer is friendly, easy, maybe even warm. The inner layers, the real ones, are reserved for very few. Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the outside world, and the inner sanctum behind it, where the true self quietly resides. This cabin is an inner sanctum, small, warm, enclosed, and entirely on your terms. You don't need a big audience. You need a few windows that glow with people who actually know you. There's real strength in this. You are likely loyal, consistent, and deeply present once someone has earned a place inside your walls. You remember details. You notice when someone is struggling even when they say they are fine. You create the very feeling of safety in others that you quietly crave for yourself. But the forest that protects you can also isolate you. If you've been hurt by inconsistency before, by people who came close and then disappeared, you may now test new connections without realizing it, waiting to see if they'll stay before you let them all the way in. Sometimes this means you choose what's familiar over what's actually good for you, simply because familiar feels like less of a risk. If this was your landscape, the lesson is gentle but important. Choose people who feel peaceful, not just familiar. Comfort and safety are not always the same thing. Sometimes the most familiar door is not the one that leads home. There is another kind of person, though, one who isn't looking for shelter at all, but for a path forward. To meet that energy, we step outside the trees and onto the trail. If your eyes went straight to the winding path beside the river, mountains rising in the distance, then you are likely someone who is constantly walking two roads at once. This landscape represents balance, not the calm, finished kind, but the kind that's still being actively worked for. People drawn to this image often carry more than others realize. You are the responsible one, the dependable one, the person others quietly lean on without ever asking if you have anything left to give. You hold things together, at work, in your family, in your friendships, often while privately feeling pulled in the opposite direction, toward freedom, toward rest, toward a life that isn't constantly managed. The path in this image bends with the land instead of cutting straight through it. That is exactly how you move through life. You adapt, you compromise, you find a way around the obstacle instead of demanding the obstacle move. This makes you remarkably resilient, but it can also mean you're rarely asked, what do you actually want? Because you so rarely ask it of yourself. In Jungian language, this is a tension of opposites, the place where duty and desire, structure and freedom sit side by side without resolution. Jung believed that growth doesn't come from eliminating one side of the tension. It comes from holding both honestly until something new is born between them. The shadow here is quiet exhaustion. You may say, I'm fine so often that you've nearly convinced yourself, even while privately fantasizing about simply walking away from every obligation for a while. This isn't selfishness. It's a sign that the scale has tipped too far toward responsibility and not far enough toward you. If this was your landscape, you don't need to escape your life. You need to rebalance it, not in one dramatic leap, but step by step, the same way this path moves, around the mountain, alongside the river, forward. Some people, though, aren't tired from carrying too much. They are restless because nothing around them feels meaningful enough to carry it all. That brings us to the fourth landscape. If the lavender field, stretching endlessly into a glowing sunset, is what pulled you in, then somewhere inside you there's a restless, persistent hunger for meaning. Not comfort, not stability for its own sake. You want your life to matter, and you can feel, almost physically, when it doesn't. People who choose this landscape are rarely satisfied by routine, even a comfortable one. A stable job that feels empty, a relationship that's fine but uninspired, a schedule that repeats itself without any real direction. These things don't relax you. They quietly suffocate you. You may have changed paths more than once in your life, not from instability, but because you sense, with total certainty, that the old path had stopped meaning anything. The endless rows of lavender, all leading toward that single glowing horizon, mirrors something in your own psyche, 1,000 small efforts, all oriented toward one larger purpose you may not have fully named yet. Jung would call this the pull of the self, the deeper, organizing center of the psyche that quietly steers us toward who we are meant to become, even when the conscious mind hasn't caught up. There is real beauty in this hunger. You bring energy into stagnant rooms. You ask, why are we doing it this way, when everyone else has stopped asking? You are willing to start over. Starting over means living more honestly. But chasing meaning constantly can also become its own trap. If you never let a moment simply be comfortable, you may mistake calm for boredom and walk away from good things simply because they stop feeling urgent. Not every chapter needs to be a turning point. Some are simply meant to be lived in. If this was your landscape, the message is clear. Follow what excites your soul, not what only looks stable on paper. But also let yourself rest inside the field sometimes, instead of always rushing toward the sunset at its edge. Not everyone seeking purpose finds it through wide open space. Some find it by going quietly inward instead. That brings us to the fifth landscape. If you were drawn to the narrow wooden bridge crossing a quiet stream, surrounded by tall green bamboo, then your inner world is currently asking for something simple but rare. Stillness, not emptiness. Stillness with depth, the kind where healing actually has room to happen. People who choose this image are often deeply sensitive, even if they've learned to hide it well. You notice things others miss, the change in someone's tone, the tension under polite conversation, the things left unsaid. This sensitivity is a gift, but it also means you absorb more of the world emotional weather than most people realize, and you need quiet, regularly, simply to process all of it. The bridge itself is a powerful symbol here. It represents a crossing, a transition between one emotional state and another. You are not standing still in stagnation. You are mid-passage, moving from something difficult towards something more settled, even if that movement feels slow. The bamboo around it bends without breaking, exactly the kind of resilience this version of you is quietly building. In Jungian terms, this landscape speaks to the introvert's path of individuation, growth that happens through reflection rather than action, through integration rather than confrontation. You don't heal by talking it out with everyone. You heal by sitting with it until it makes sense to you first. The shadow here is withdrawal. Because solitude restores you, it can be tempting to retreat further than is actually healthy, mistaking isolation for peace. There's a difference between resting in quiet and disappearing into it. The bridge is meant to be crossed, not lived on permanently. If this was your landscape, protect your need for quiet. It is not weakness, and you don't owe anyone an explanation for it. It is wisdom, the kind that lets you return to the world steadier than you left it. But there's one more landscape, for those who aren't seeking to cross towards something, but simply to have room to breathe. To complete the picture, we turn to the desert. If your eyes settled on the desert, wide open sand, scattered cactus, a sun hanging low and unhurried, then what you are craving most right now is space, not isolation. Room to think without being managed, room to feel without being questioned, room to simply exist without constant emotional negotiation. People drawn to this landscape value independence in a way that isn't always easy for others to understand. You don't need constant company to feel connected to someone. In fact, too much emotional pressure, too many questions, too much checking in can make you pull away even from people you genuinely care about. It isn't rejection. It's self-preservation. The desert is vast, but it isn't empty. The cacti survive here precisely because they've adapted, conserving what they need, growing slowly, asking little of their environment. That's very much your nature. You don't require much to feel okay, but you do require freedom, the freedom to come and go emotionally without being punished for it. Jung often spoke of individuation as a journey that, at certain points, must be walked alone. This landscape reflects exactly that stage, a season where your growth depends less on closeness and more on space, distance, and quiet self-reliance. The risk here, though, is real. Freedom can quietly tip into distance. If you withdraw every time things feel emotionally intense, the people who care about you may eventually stop trying to reach you at all, not because they don't want to, but because they've learned that you'll disappear regardless. Independence protects you, but it can also leave you lonelier than you intended. If this was your landscape, the lesson is simple but important. Freedom doesn't have to mean isolation. You can still need space and communicate before you disappear into it. The desert doesn't reject visitors. It just asks them to respect its silence, not avoid it entirely. 6 landscapes, 6 different emotional climates, and yet none of them is more right than the others. The coast doesn't make you cold, and the desert doesn't make you distant. Each one simply shows where your psyche is standing right now, what it's asking for, and what it's quietly trying to protect. Carl Jung believed that real growth doesn't come from picking one part of yourself and discarding the rest. It comes from integration, learning to hold clarity and softness, safety and risk, freedom and connection, all at once, without needing to choose permanently between them. The landscape you chose today is not a label. It's a snapshot. Next month, next year, even next week, a different image might pull you in instead. And that won't be a contradiction. It will be growth. So take a moment and ask yourself honestly, what is this landscape actually telling you to do? Is it time to speak the clear truth you've been avoiding? To choose peace over familiarity? To rebalance instead of escape? To follow meaning instead of staying comfortable? To protect your quiet? To ask for space without disappearing? If this resonated with you, drop your number in the comments, 1 through 6, and tell us what it revealed. And if you like more reflections like this one, make sure to like and follow. The path forward isn't about choosing the correct landscape. It's about learning to recognize every one of them as part of who you already are.